transported and be sent to Botany Bay.
Here was the answer to Britain's crowded jails. Australia, a fresh claim for England, a new settlement for its convicts. A huge continent at the other end of the earth, considered empty land, despite compelling evidence that it was not.
I've got to tell you, this is where life on earth started. These are my family's yarns. This was Tucker, this was a place to stay, this was a place to meet, this was a place to have crobberies. When James Cook dropped anchor there, my family went out, they got in their bark canoes, went out and went around his boat, come back in and kept fishing. So there was no problem to us, and that's what we were like. We were pretty friendly fellas.
Most of us have heard about Captain James Cook's landing at Botany Bay in 1770. But lesser known is the area's Indigenous history, the stories of the Aboriginal people whose ancestors first met Cook. These are the stories of the Timbery family. They've lived in this place called Gurrawal for generations, making and throwing boomerangs on this same patch of ground.
My name's Laddie Timby and I was born around on a mission in 1941. And we used to get pretty excited as well when the teachers used to ask us at Larperoo School who discovered Australia. Oh, I know, sir. Laddie Timby, who? Oh, James Cook. James Cook, sir, he discovered Australia. And this is what, we used to get excited about it. But that was in the 40s when we was a bit young and we didn't know much difference, you know. We believed everything the Gubs and the Wadjamans told us. Gub's a white fella. And it's, you know, the Wadjaman, white woman, and we're Kooris because we live on the coast, or Murris if you like, Aboriginals, whatever you like. Most of the stuff we can tell you is not in books. It's only the Timbery family can tell you. So we're the only ones allowed to do that, see?
Cook says he discovered Australia's original inhabitants, but Laddie's ancestor, Arago Timbery, says he discovered Cook. Smoke signals to pass on messages were lit on headlands up and down the coast.
Arago Timbery wants the Gubs coming at Lake Illawarra, Larperoos and Sydney Harbour. The Timbery man. Oh, he followed the Gubs up the coast. As soon as they light the fire, the smoke went up, all the other Kooris know what was going on. This is how smart our mob was. So we knew what was happening all the time. Everybody knew it was coming up the coast. The message was out bloody months before Jimmy Cook got here.
18 years after Cook's visit, Arago's people witnessed the arrival of the French captain Larperoos. He'd sailed into Botany Bay 6 days after the first fleet of convicts arrived from Britain. Arago was named after a French sailor who drew this sketch. These early stories are a particular interest of Laddie's son, Jeff.
That's why there was such things as ceremonies and trading would go on, because that was when information would be passed on to different areas all around Australia. So knowledge of ships and people being on them already existed. And we're talking about, 1500s when earlier explorers in their ships travel around our coastal areas and had actually, landed on the shores as well.
My great-great-great-grandfather, he married a Spanish lady, same time James Cook come in, so we've got bullfighting blood in us.
Cook also had roamed the oceans before arriving in Botany Bay. He spent much time in the Pacific, where he was not always a welcome visitor. Of the Aboriginal people, Cook said this.
They may appear to some to be the most wretched people on earth, but in reality they are far more happier than we Europeans. They seem to set no value on anything we gave them. All they seemed to want was for us to be gone.
We knew that these people were always coming to take. Wherever they had travelled, they had never been ones to, bear any gifts. It might have been the odd trinket. Nobody was really interested because they had no use. They already had their own tools. They had come up to the campsite, and when they had a look around at the campsite, they were looking through the huts and so on, and they come across tools and a 20 spears were taken from that one place. And having your spears taken away was, you know, like there goes all your resources, there goes all your tools. The family placed shields and so on in front of the babies to try and hide them in one of the huts. Cook's response was to remove the shields and taken them with them also. But fortunately, they didn't harm the children. But from the second day onwards, they had never seen a child or a female again in the Botany Bay area. So life was affected not only during Cook's period that he was in the bay, but after he had left, there was still a lot of suffering. You had these fellows that were shot at, so there would be mourning going on for those fellows. If the shots weren't bad enough to actually wound them, they would have got lead poisoning and so on. What they left in return was they drew a map on the ground of a person lying down like a shaped figure, and then they placed a shirt and a pair of trousers down there on the ground with the map there to symbolise what they could be used for.
The First Fleet had arrived with this royal instruction.
It must endeavour by every means possible to live in amity with the natives.
But it was soon clear that the First Fleet had great problems of understanding both the people and the environment. Cook had described Botany Bay as an ideal place for settlement. But the officers of the First Fleet looked and were appalled. The anchorage seemed poor, the soil sandy, and above all, there appeared to be very little water.
There was plenty of fresh water here. It was just on the end of the Larparoos beach there where my family used to fish, and water, just fresh water there. There's fresh water just around under this point of Big Congy, over Little Congy there. The fresh water comes down, around Pussycat, fresh water, and it's still running there.
The fleet was desperate for water, and fresh food had gone long ago. Everyone was hungry for the land. After the disappointment of Botany Bay, Port Jackson offered hope for a settlement only a short distance up the coast.
If they'd have come in and spent a little bit of time with our mob, because our mob went out and around them, and I'm just told they just went around and come back in, my family. But they probably would have invited them in for a feed. But when Jimmy Cook come in here, put his foot there, and our mob come down, and when he pulled the guns out, our mob had no chance. So they just threw a few spears and humped it back in the bush. If we come out the bush now, we'll have double-barrel boomerangs, brother. We'd fix him, don't worry. We wouldn't miss him next bloody time.
Change came swiftly and dramatically after those early years of discovery. Smallpox and other imported diseases wiped out most of the original Botany Bay people. As white man settled, people were moved off their tribal lands, fences put up, traditional hunting grounds invaded by foreign species, changing the landscape beyond recognition. In the 1880s, Aborigines were finally confined to Larparoos on the shores of Botany Bay. Missionaries supervised the reserve. Larparoos is where Laddie grew up.
You know, I went to Larparoo School in 1941. They used to have a reenactment ceremony every so often, just to remind us about who discovered Australia. And then they used to have the white fellas there painted up, you know, because everything had to be white then. No black culture whatsoever, holy muckles. So when they needed some black actors, they painted the gubs up. Them, the blacks running out the scrub, throwing spears, and that of James Cook, the man who discovered Australia, the great man. And when they had guns, because they was too good, boomerangs were no match, and spears against the guns. So they shot the Aboriginal people, and we thought that was great shooting, because we thought the black fellas, our people were baddies because they were black, and we used to clap and be happy. But it's a little bit different now. I suppose that's why we wagged school, because we were sort of, our family would tell us one story, we'd go to school, and the gubs, the white fellas, would tell us another story. And we after a while, when we got a little bit old, 9 or 10, 11, we started to understand things, and we said, well, our mob must be right. My mum and dad, they must be telling me the truth. They wouldn't tell me a lie.
Laddie's relatives always had a strong sense of their own history, which they kept alive with arts and crafts. This is Queen Emma Timbury, whose shell work was a favourite with Queen Victoria of Britain. Joe Timbury was a world champion boomerang thrower in the 40s. Laddie's own family came into being when he married Anne.
I was, just turned 17 and she was 13. I didn't know anything. She got me young. She spoilt me, reared me 4 kids, now me 10 grandkids, so I'm a pretty lucky fella as well.
The Loop is the name of the patch of ground where the Timbrys have kept their bit of history going. Tourists never tire of Laddie's endless good humour. He's as much entertainer as cultural ambassador.
Honeysuckle. I generally charge more money for that because I ate the widgety grub that was in there. If I leave the widgety grub in there, I've got to charge him more money.
That's a kite, look.
Oh, the battle axe. This one here, the Nulla Nulla, this is made for the men in case the women muck up.
I can't do it, mate.
Don't worry, I make big ones for the women. Because I can't throw a boomerang when the planes are going over here because they're so low, and I don't want to hit anybody or any planes because, you know, I keep telling everybody we're friendly fellas now, so we've got to be careful. People come in and say to me, they say, but if you've got left-handed people in your family, I just keep telling them, I said, brother, we had left-handed fellas in our family for 275,000 years and 5 months, a long time.
Laddie, for all his jokes, has a serious purpose. Keeping the culture going for his own family and the rest of Australia.
You can see how much I'm leaning it, and that's how you throw the boomerang. I pick a spot out about halfway up that tree I'm aiming, and when I let it go, pow, I just lean it that much. You've got to throw this properly. Don't dare throw it flat. That's no good. That's a frisbee, that other tribe across the water. Is he right-handed or left-handed? Right, power. And see this sign here? Throw it over that. Throw it hard. Good throw, look at this.
Oh!
The Timbri women have been just as active as the boomerang masters of the Loop.
Boomerang and the shell work go together.
Carrying on the tradition is Laddie's auntie Esma.
She's my mum's sister. Even today we still live on pennywinkles, conchs, pippies, bimblers. Everything was done for a purpose and nothing was ever wasted.
You don't really know what you're going to do until you start. You don't make plans with shell work. There's a lot to it by the time you go and get your shells and bring them home and sort them out.
In the old days, artefacts were made at the Loop. Now they're handmade at the Timbri shop in Huskisson, New South Wales.
But we've got to earn money the same as anybody else. Things have changed so much and it's probably changed too quick. Well, my family started at La Perouse with 8-gauge fencing wine about 179 years ago. So they've been doing it for a long time. So we had to go modern, you know, my family's pretty smart fellas. And they knew they had to earn a couple of dollars. It only takes a little bit of practice. I used to say to my family, I used to watch them at La Perouse in the 40s, how am I going to do that? They say, oh, you'll do it one day. And that's it. All our family, they want to do this. They want to do it because they know it's their culture. And that's all they're doing, just keeping a bit of the culture going. So that's a bit of Kuri tucker. Good tucker, that fella, brother. Holy muckles. So does that look like a kangaroo, baby? We ate the rest of him, see? We got a bit hungry.
For generations before Cook, Timbris have come to collect ochre from this one special place. Jeff still collects the ochre for his performances with his Bidjigal dance troupe.
You can see how the ochre will come out onto your skin, and so all the pigments will have different colours, as you can see from the natural clays.
Jeff's sons are also learning the dance business.
Yum. Tastes so right.
Laddie's grandson, Jake Ferguson, is only 5,
Not allowed to eat them. You'll be dead.
but he's already a bush tucker man. He understands medicine,
That what the most bad is.
when to eat certain foods,
They aren't right.
and how to manage the animal kingdom.
Very good. Very good, little fella. Stay right there where you are. Stay right there. Yeah, don't pull me out. Ow! Oh, that little mongrel. Crab.
Land is central to the life of Aboriginal people.
A lot of Aboriginal people are fighting for hunting rights, being able to go to particular areas that the family have been going for over 40,000 years, and all of a sudden there's been this big fence has been put up, and no trespassing and so on. So with those things happening, you're changing the family's lifestyle. So instead of them being able to go hunting and collecting the tucker, they're getting in trouble, they're breaking the law. From the government's sort of point of view, people speak about Aboriginal people just being nomadic, always travelling around. Aboriginal people were always farmers of the land. You lived with the land. We didn't put up fences for people's boundaries. Times when you would farm the land, you would burn the bush. Burning the bush, one thing, as you're probably aware of, is that you can have easier access for you to travel on there. We have a lot of plants in Australia that actually need bushfire for them to regerminate. Burning of the bush, of course, regenerating the bush, the young shoots and so on coming up from the plants, attracts all the animals to that area. So as when your family would come by that area again, it was thriving with tucker. So there was a farming technique that existed all over Australia. There's a lot of things that we've been doing for that such long of period that the land actually wants it as well. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we've continued to have this farming technique over the land, regenerating, bringing the animals and so on to those areas. Now we don't do any burning of the bush and so on. We're finding a lot of introduced species of plants, and also the animals. So it's changing, the environment's changing. Look what was traditional techniques for looking after the land. We speak about today a lot of salt coming out of the earth, a lot of farmlands are having a lot of problems. It's because of how they had changed the environment or the land for them farms. They chopped down all those trees that kept shade and kept the water and the soil as well. The layers of the leaves and burning of the bush kept the land alive. So I guess we need to look back at the traditional techniques.
Non-Indigenous Australians believe land belongs to them. Indigenous Australians believe they belong to the land. A cave such as this is as much an historic monument as any city statue. We're still divided over how we see history in this country. Look at this Australia Day ceremony, for example. It's the beginning of a new millennium. Some proudly fly the Australian flag, with its British royal colours and tangible connections to England. Others embrace our Indigenous culture, cheerfully joining in the dances, learning more about the animals and the environment that have shaped us. Laddie believes we can learn much from Aboriginal people.
We don't discriminate from anybody, because that's how we're brought up, as far as we're concerned and my family's concerned. We're all Australians and we just want to get on with it, brother.
If we can embrace the best of both cultures, he believes we can have a stronger sense of national identity. We already look to Aboriginal people for our cultural icons. When it comes to symbols of Australia, the boomerang is one of our most enduring images. Like many Aboriginal people, Laddie is resigned to the legacy of James Cook.
Oh, well, somebody else would have come. This is a good country, don't worry, this is still the best country on this earth. Just to get on and help one another. That's what makes our people so different, because all they wanted to do was just give and help. Somebody wanted something, you had it, you ask them, you'd get it. It's just bred in us, we can't help that.
Overseas visitors lap up the dances and art of Aboriginal people. In their eyes, it's what makes Australia unique.
Just live together, live with one another. And it's so easy just to give, nod your head and smile.
Australian historians seem to find that Cook's arrival was so important to Aboriginal history. The more important stories that had to be passed on and kept and held on to was about your creation stories, was about your language stories, who you belong to and your identity. And they were the important ones.
We know what we are, we know we're Aboriginal people, we know we're Kooris. My thing is just give. And that's what it's all about. That's what makes it so easy. We'll never die rich, but at least we'll die happy. Goodbye.
Stay right there we are.
We're all Australians and we just let's get on with it, that's all.
Ow! That reminds me. Crab.
Timberies.
Thank you.